There's an eight-stage pattern that has destroyed the middle class in every country where it appears. Weimar Germany, Argentina, Venezuela, and right now, in 2025, America is entering stage 6. We're not sliding toward collapse. We're actively inside it. In 1970, a single income could buy a house, raise kids, take vacations, and retire comfortably. That family earned $9,870 a year. In 2025, that same lifestyle costs $150,000 minimum, but the median household earns $75,000. The American middle class isn't struggling, it's dying. And it's following an eight-stage collapse pattern we can track year by year, dollar by dollar. Let me show you what that means in practice. In 1970, the median home cost $23,000. That's 2.3 times the median income. A father working at the factory could save for a down payment in 2 years. College tuition at a state school ran $1,200 annually, about 12% of that single income. Gas cost 36 cents per gallon. A family of 4 spent $2,500 a year on healthcare. One income covered the mortgage, the kids' education, the family station wagon, 2 weeks at the beach, and still had money left for savings. That wasn't rich. That was normal. That was the deal. Here's the same math today. Median home, $420,000. That's 5.6 times median income. The down payment alone takes 8 to 10 years to save. State college tuition, $28,000 per year, consuming 37% of median household income. Healthcare for a family, $24,000 annually. That's 32% right there. The same middle-class life that one income bought in 1970 now requires $150,000 or more, 2 incomes working full-time, 0 savings, and no clear path to retirement. This didn't happen randomly. It's not bad luck or poor choices. It's an 8-stage economic collapse pattern, and it's measurable. Stage 1, wage stagnation. Stage 2, asset inflation. Stage 3, debt dependency. Stage 4, two-income trap. Stage 5, downward mobility. Stage 6, survival mode. Stage 7, mass exodus. Stage 8, permanent underclass. Right now, 50 million American families are living in stage 6. And once you see the pattern, once you understand where we actually are, you'll realize we're further along than anyone wants to admit. This is the story of how the American dream became mathematically impossible and why the middle class is already gone. Stage number 1, wage stagnation. In 1971, Richard Nixon ended the Bretton Woods system, decoupling the dollar from gold. What happened next changed everything. From 1973 to 2023, American worker productivity increased 74%. Output per hour, efficiency, technology, all of it went up. Wages increased 12%. That's it. Workers were producing more, earning less in real terms. The year 1973 marks the peak of median wage purchasing power in American history. Adjusted for inflation, the median worker earned $51,000 that year. In 2023, 50 years later, the median wage was $56,000, a 9% increase over half a century, while the cost of housing increased 300%. Education increased 400%, and healthcare increased 600%. For the first time in American history, working harder meant earning less. The foundation cracked. Stage number 2, asset inflation. Between 1980 and 2000, the 3 pillars of middle-class life became unaffordable. Housing went first. That 2.2 times income ratio from 1970 hit 4.1 times income by 2000. By 2025, it reached 5.8 times income. What took 2 years to save for now takes a decade. Education costs exploded simultaneously. State college tuition climbed from $200 in 1970 to $8,000 and $2,000 to $28,000 in 2025. Student loan debt, which didn't exist as a category in 1970, reached $1.7 trillion. An entire generation graduated into debt bondage. Healthcare followed the same trajectory. Family coverage that cost $2,500 in 1970, about 15% of median income, jumped to $24,000 by 2025, consuming 32% of median household income. Medical bankruptcy, a term that didn't exist in 1970, became the leading cause of personal bankruptcy by 2000. The 3 things you needed to be middle class, home ownership, education, and healthcare, were systematically priced out of reach. Wages stayed flat, costs multiplied, and the middle class made a fatal decision. They started borrowing. Stage number 3, debt dependency. When wages couldn't cover essentials, the middle class turned to credit. Credit card debt exploded from $238 billion in 1990 to $1.13 trillion in 2024. Mortgage debt went from $2.5 trillion to $12.4 trillion. Student loan debt climbed from $24 billion to $1.77 trillion. Auto loans surged from $300 billion to $1.6 trillion. The numbers tell the story. In 1990, average household debt equaled 58% of annual income. By 2000, it hit 74%. By 2010, 98%. By 2024, household debt exceeded annual income at 103%. For the first time in American history, the average family owed more than it earned in a year. Minimum payments became permanent budget items. Interest replaced savings. The middle class wasn't building wealth anymore. They were renting their lifestyle on credit. And one emergency, medical bill, job loss, car repair, could trigger a cascade they couldn't survive. The trap was set. Stage number 4. Two-income trap. The solution seemed obvious. Send the second parent to work. In 1970, 40% of mothers worked outside the home. By 2000, that number hit 70%. Today, it's 75%. But this wasn't empowerment. It was economic necessity. Here's the math that doesn't work. In 1970, a single median income of $50,000 in today's dollars could buy a house, raise children, and save for retirement. By 2000, dual median incomes totaling $70,000 barely covered what that single income provided 3 decades earlier. The second income brought new costs. Childcare averaged $15,000 per year. A second car, insurance, maintenance, gas. Prepared meals because no one had time to cook. Professional wardrobes. The net gain after expenses was minimal or negative. 2 people working full-time, less time together, more stress, fewer options, and still falling further behind what one income achieved in 1970. Working twice as hard to lose ground. Stage 4? Complete. But it gets worse, mate, because the next stage crosses a line America had never crossed before. Stage number 5, downward mobility. For the first time in United States history, children became economically worse off than their parents. The data is brutal. In 1970, 90% of children earned more than their parents did at age 30. By 1980, that dropped to 85%. By 1990, 75%. By 2000, 60%. By 2020, it fell to 50%. In 2024, only 47% of 30-year-olds earn more than their parents did at the same age. The American promise of upward mobility died. Look at what this means in practice. A boomer couple married in 1975 earned $45,000 combined, bought a $35,000 house, and retired at 62 with a pension. Their children married in 2005 earned $85,000 combined, bought a $350,000 house if they could buy it all, have no pension, and face retirement at 70 or later? Maybe never. Everything got delayed. The average age for marriage moved from 23 to 29. First child from 24 to 31. Home purchase from 28 to 36. Many chose not to have children because it costs $300,000 to raise one child to adulthood, and they couldn't afford it. The wealth transfer collapsed. Boomers inherited from the silent generation and built their own wealth. Gen X and millennials are inheriting from boomers, but building nothing themselves. Gen Z will inherit nothing and start life already drowning in debt. Family wealth accumulation, the engine of middle-class continuity, broke. The retirement crisis is visible now. In 1980, 60% of workers had pensions. In 2024, only 15% do. The median 401k balance for Americans aged 55 to 64 is $61,000. They need over $1 million. Social Security replaces only 40% of income. There is no pathway to retirement for the majority. Stage 5 complete. For the first time in American history, upward mobility became statistically improbable. The escalator stopped. Then it started moving backwards. And then came 2020 and everything accelerated. Stage number 6, survival mode. We are here right now. The pandemic exposed and accelerated every weakness simultaneously. Between 2020 and 2022, housing prices surged 40% in 3 years. Inflation hit 9% in 2022, the highest rate since 1981. Interest rates jumped from 3% to 8%. The monthly mortgage payment for the same house doubled from $1,700 to $3,000. Rent increased 30% nationally. The middle class that was treading water suddenly went underwater. Look at the current data from 2024 and 2025. 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. 63% couldn't cover a $500 emergency without borrowing. Half the country has $0 in savings. Credit card debt hit an all-time high of $1.13 trillion, with an average interest rate of 22%. Delinquency rates are climbing to 3.1%, the highest since 2012. This is what survival mode actually means. Every month becomes a calculation of which bill gets paid. Food or medicine, rent or car payment, heat or electricity. 45% of Americans delay medical care because they can't afford it. Buy now, pay later services exploded from 46 billion to 250 billion in 4 years because people can't pay for necessities up front. 36% work a side hustle not for extra money, but just to survive. An emergency becomes a catastrophe. A $1,500 car repair triggers eviction. The desperation is invisible. Middle-class jobs, middle-class homes, middle-class appearances on the surface, but zero margin for error underneath. One layoff, one medical event, one major repair equals financial collapse. They look middle class. They're actually 1 month from poverty. The signs are everywhere. Record credit card debt, record auto loan defaults, record numbers of people working into their 70s because they can't retire, record multi-generational housing with adult children living with parents because they can't afford to leave, record medical debt destroying credit scores. This isn't temporary hardship. This is stage 6. Survival mode is the new normal. Stage number 7, mass exodus. We're not there yet, but the signs are visible. When survival mode becomes unsustainable, the floor gives out. Stage 7 is when the statistical middle class drops into the working poor. The triggers are already forming. Mass layoffs from artificial intelligence and automation are predicted to eliminate 30% of current jobs by 2030. The next recession will catch families with zero reserves and maximum debt. Stage number 8, permanent underclass. This is the endpoint. Middle class becomes a historical term like yeoman farmer or company man. A two-tier society emerges, the wealthy at 10% and the working poor at 90%. No pathway upward because education is too expensive, housing is unattainable, and wealth is required to build wealth. Stage 8 is when middle class becomes something we call people in old photographs. The retirement crisis hits full force as boomers try to retire with no savings. Healthcare costs continue rising faster than wages. Currently, 50% of Americans fall into the middle-class income bracket of $50,000 to $150,000. Projections show that dropping to 35% by 2030 and 25% by 2035. The exodus has started. 2 million households dropped out of the middle class in 2023 alone. The pattern is mathematical. You cannot have wages grow 12% while costs grow 300%. You cannot have housing cost 6 times income and call it attainable. You cannot have 78% of people living paycheck to paycheck and call it a middle class. The math doesn't work. It never worked. Stage 6 is when everyone realizes it. Maybe policy will change. Maybe wages will rise. Maybe costs will stabilize. Maybe technology will fix it. Maybe your kids will be okay. But here's what the pattern shows. Stage 6 always leads to stage 7. Every economic pattern that reaches this point continues. We're not approaching stage 6. We're deep inside it. 78% paycheck to paycheck isn't a statistic, it's a crisis. The middle class isn't struggling. It's entering stage 7. And once you see the pattern, once you see we're at stage 6 of 8, you can't unsee it.